Hi, everyone. Thank you for being here. I am Carolina Pinzón, and I'm a business analyst at Waze, specifically working in the strategy and planning team. Now, the Waze that you know today started in 2009 as a completely empty map. And really, our users are the ones that have paved the roads that you see today. And now we're up to 130 million active Wazers and 500,000 map editors that contribute to this map every day. With this, we have crowdsourced information that allows us to provide real-time traffic information and traffic alerts. And what we're really doing is trying to save our users time by taking advantage of that excess capacity that we have on our roads and kind of find them shortcuts or ways in which they can save time. And with this, we've really fulfilled our mission of outsmarting traffic together, but we have a new mission. We know that traffic and its consequences continue to grow. In an article published by the New York Times last week, we know that the EPA states that transportation became the #1 contributor of greenhouse emissions in 2017. And we know that $87 billion of economic losses in 2018 are attributable to traffic. And the problem is probably only projected to grow, and we also know that by 2050, we will have doubled the number of cars that we have on our roads today. So let's try to visualize the issue. If you were to imagine 60 people commuting to work, this is what it would look like if they were driving alone. If they were to use a ride-sharing service, it's possible that the number of cars that would be required in order to service this amount of people would still be 60 cars. And even in a future with autonomous vehicles, you'll find that as long as you're still alone in the car, you're not really solving the problem. You're actually part of the problem. So that's where carpooling comes in. Carpooling is a solution that we believe can work now. And what we're really doing with carpooling is taking advantage of that excess capacity that we have within our cars and seeing if we can actually remove the cars off the road. So to date, carpool planning has been extremely manual. How do you define a schedule? How do you define who to carpool with? How do you pay them? How much do you pay them? And even safety concerns add to a long, long list of what makes carpooling a hassle right now. But what we try to do in Carpool at Waze is we try to make this a seamless experience. We match you with people that are near your home and work. And with the algorithms that we have, we're able to optimize these carpool matches for schedules and detours and give you the ability to choose who you're carpooling with. But for carpooling to work, you can have a perfect product, but you still need density. You need a critical mass of riders and drivers that are going along the same routes. So with this in mind, we brought to you 2 projects that we did. I'm not going to go into the technical details a lot, but basically how these projects help shape the strategy of our business as well. So the first one is measuring carpool potential. And what we did here was leverage Waze navigations data in order to understand what percentage of the navigations that happen in different cities could have been a carpool, depending on whether they were really close by, had a similar route, or had similar departure times. So some of the key questions that came up here are, do we have enough commuters that are on similar routes and have similar departure times? How can we show cities that carpooling is a feasible solution to the mobility problems that they have? What is the potential impact of carpooling on congestion and pollution? And the fourth is, how can we prioritize markets within our business based on the highest potential of carpooling that we already see in our community of Wazers? So the way in which we did this, to put it very simply, is to look at one user navigating from point A to point B and try to see if there were any other users navigating at around the same time with a similar route. And the way in which we did this was to look at navigations on S2 cells. So they're level 14 cells. They measure about 500 meters by 500 meters. Sometimes they're larger or smaller. Around 400 to 600 is what they range from. And basically, we took a very simplified table after cleaning a lot of the data, and we were looking at navigation IDs, timestamp, origin S2 cells, destination S2 cells, and we were storing the information on the neighbors of those cells, and also we did kind of a time interval scanning. And what that allows us to have as an output This is a simplified output. We have a lot of things that we're working on right now. But what we have in terms of an output is we can play with the time bounds and geographic bounds of navigations in order to understand if a person, any person, was willing to shift their schedule by 15 minutes, would we be able to find them a match? Yes? And what if we were looking at similar origin and destinations? What if we weren't looking at exact S2 cell matching for origin and destination, but looking at the neighboring cells, which would be around a radius of maybe 1 kilometer? If we looked at that as well, we would be able to see the different time bounds that we'd be moving and how many people we would be able to match. And this is especially important because, for example, this year, Mexico City announced that it's going to be implementing HOV lanes moving forward in some of the main corridors of its city. And there's a lot of questions that were raised around the feasibility of a policy like this. And citizens were saying, is it really true that we can find people that are going along the same route? So what this allows us to do is to translate this into different pieces of impact, right? So one of the things that we can say is how many cars are we removing off the road, and what's the impact of that on congestion and also on pollution measures as well. And then we can also internally prioritize markets by those organic drivers that we already see, and we can show cities that carpooling is possible. If we're able to do this, it's much easier to go and partner with a city to make sure that there are viable options of policies that we can use in order for them to push carpooling as a way to lower traffic as well. Now, the second project that I brought here to talk about is identifying major corridors and hubs. And what we did here was combine both census-level commuting data and all of the internal data that we have in order to identify pockets of carpooling potential, right? So the key questions that we had here are, for example, what routes already have the highest volume of commuters? What routes have a good mass transit service level and HOV lanes or tolls? This is especially important when you're comparing riders and drivers. For riders, for example, if their commute is based on a train, for example, Caltrain, going from San Jose to San Francisco, if their alternative of mass transport matches in time and money a carpool, they won't switch. But if we're able to find transit deserts, as we call them, where we could provide a better service that's even more door-to-door than mass transit, then we would be able to provide a better service for these users as well. Another question is, where are there clusters or concentrations of employers? This is also important because if we already have the matching destination, let's say, of a commute, then it just solves one part of the puzzle. So partnering with employers is extremely important to us, and we also help them reduce the amount of parking spots that they're taking up and other information. And the last one is, how can we acquire users that have a high propensity to carpool in order to get the most bang for our buck, right? Return on investment. We don't want to be targeting people that we may not have high service levels for, and depending on different demographic attributes as well, we want to be able to target users correctly. So with basically the same table, we were able to run these different navigations through Waze routing and Google routing. This includes things like the Google Places API, the Google Directions API, I believe, and some of our proprietary routing. And with the Waze routing, what we're able to see is the volume, for example, of commuters that go through a certain corridor, whether those corridors have HOV lanes already or have tolls, and the distance, because we know that for carpooling to work, there's like a sweet spot interval of distance in commuting that works out. Maybe 5 kilometers is too short, and maybe 35 kilometers is too long. And with Google routing, what we're able to do is take those same navigations and compute the alternatives of mass transit, right? And see whether there's high availability, whether it's costly and how we compare in costs, and also how convenient it is to use in terms of time savings. And with this, what we were able to provide our partnerships team and marketing teams is layers within a tool that we built for them. With external data related to the census and how many people already report to carpooling, demographics, things like this. And we also provided internal business data And this includes like employers that we already have in our pipeline, and we're trying to prioritize that pipeline, right? So we want to understand which employers we should be closing first because they're gonna take the most cars off the road. And then the third piece is product data. We want to look at those commuting corridors and give our partner managers the ability to track the progress of the community corridors if they are close to partnerships that they're probably closing, whether they're close to toll corridors or HOV corridors, and information like this. And then the impact that we see here is that we're able to give them a tool. We gave them access to a published Carto dashboard, which they can very easily play with. And they can visualize the market opportunity that they have and, in time, the growth that they have in different corridors. We're also able to see the pipeline prioritized for these partners, as I mentioned. And the third one is that we're able to take this information and kind of cut it into smaller areas, maybe zip codes or bins, if you would say, and see how we can acquire users better through paid acquisition, events, or even the placement of billboards is important to us as well. So in all, thank you very much for having me here. And if you want to learn more about these projects, I am happy to go into more of the technical details with you. But yeah, if you can, start carpooling and let's get some cars off the road. Thank you.